guys, my name's Barry and welcome back to the channel. We've got a bit of a Scream 7 update in terms of the timeline when Scream 7 is going to take place. Now on Twitter, can't remember the Twitter guy's name now, but apparently the person that's told everyone about this news is very reliable, and they've mentioned that the timeline is going to take a bit of a time jump in the series. Now, it isn't the first time it's happened. Time jumps have happened quite a few times in the franchise, and I don't mean just going with the time of today where they're coming out and they're being set in the time that the movies came out. There has been time jumps in the franchise. Now, for a time jump to happen in this one, there has to be a good reason for it, and I think the main reason that they want to do a time jump would be to introduce Sidney's daughters to play a major role in an upcoming trilogy, which would make sense. However, a time jump isn't necessarily the thing that they need to do for that to happen, and I'll tell you why. Now, first of all, everybody seems to think that Sidney's kids can't be any older than being born in 2012, which would make sense because it doesn't seem like she was with Mark in Scream 4. And for her to start a family, 2012 would be the very earliest that she could have children, because Scream 4 was definitely set in 2011. That was established in Scream 5 when Sam mentioned that the events took place in 2011.
The last time it happened was in 2011.
Now, as you know, Scream 5 was set in September 2021. Although the film came out in 2022, it was set in September 2021, which was the 25th anniversary of the events of what happened in September 1996 from the original. That's established at the end of Scream 5.
25 years ago, almost to the day.
This then tells us that Scream 6 is set in September, round about September 2022. Again, although the movie came out in 2023, it's set after the events of Scream 5.
Whatever happened to both of you a year ago?
So if Scream 7 comes out in 2025 and it's set in normal time, 2025, it would mean that our oldest kid would be a maximum age of 13 if they were born in 2012 and the movie was set in 2025. So a 13-year-old being chased by Ghostface, as scary as that sounds, I don't think they would want to do that. I think they want to set it up for a trilogy, for that child at least to be part of an older teenager group, maybe a 16, 17-year-old, because that's what age Sidney was when she was in the first movie. And I think that's the idea, or so they say, that's the idea that they want to go with this trilogy. Sidney being in the movie, Mark being in the movie, but focusing more on her oldest child being a younger teenager. There's two things that they can do in order to make her teenager 16 years old. Now, one of them is, of course, the time jump, setting it forward to maybe 2028, which I don't think is the best option. I think the best option personally would be to have her kids being older, meeting Mark before the events of Scream 4. Now, she already met Mark in Scream 3, and there's nothing to say that they couldn't have started their relationship after the events of Scream 3 and before the events of Scream 4. Now, although that Sidney doesn't have a wedding ring in Scream 4, I did rewatch it specifically for this video so that I don't make too many mistakes. And she's obviously not married, or so it seems that she's not married. Remember, she's gone back to Woodsboro after all these years, 10, 15 years. I don't think she wants to risk people knowing that she's married to someone, Mark. And she also especially doesn't want anyone knowing that she has a child. Now, in Scream 5, her children are babies, or one of them at least is a baby.
I'm just trying to get a run-in before I take the girls to school. How are you?
So it doesn't mean that she doesn't have older kids. She could have had older kids with Mark. They could have been 4, 5, 6 years old with the events of Scream 4. We just don't know because she hasn't told us that she has kids, but she also hasn't told us that she hasn't had kids. Now, she's established to Dewey over the phone in Scream 5 that yes, she's got kids. I think she feels a little bit more safe now that she's nowhere near Woodsboro. She had no plans, remember, on going back to Woodsboro. So why not say to Dewey, one of her closest friends, that yeah, I've got kids. But because Dewey died, she had to come back and try and deal with what's happening so that people started finding out that Sidney is alive and back, and also she's got kids and a family. I personally think it's easier to retcon certain things that are easily explainable rather than doing a time jump, because if you're time jumping to the year 2028, and our kid's going to be, say, 16 years old, you're then having to try and show less technology, because in 2028 there's going to be more technology than there is right now. Does that mean the next movie, Scream 8, would involve another time jump to, say, 2029, 2030 by the time that movie comes out? They can't really set it in 2028 again if it involves a teenager, because that teenager is going to have to look a little bit older, and so is Sidney Prescott, so is Gale Weathers if Gale Weathers comes back, and so does Mark Kincaid. So you're going to have to do way more things to prevent people thinking, well, this doesn't look right, for a time jump to happen. I think it's more easily explainable to say Sidney already had a 4-year-old child in 2011 with Mark Kincaid, either her boyfriend or her husband at the time, and then just explain that she didn't want to tell anybody about it because the Ghostface killings were happening, and it's happened again. When it comes to suspension of disbelief, I think it's easy to do something like that rather than doing a time jump. Personally, for me anyway, I know that some people would like to see a time jump because they think that would explain it a little bit easier, but you have to look at the repercussions of a time jump. If you're doing a time jump for a one-off movie, it might be okay, but if you're doing a time jump for a film that's setting up another trilogy, what do you do then? Do you wait a few years to do Scream 8? Do you want to do it straight away, film it straight away so that the people look the same age? There's just too much hassle. I don't think a time jump is possible, to be honest. Now, when I go back to the person who stated there's going to be a time jump, I don't know how they've found that information out. It's possible that they were told Sidney's going to have a 16-year-old child, and they're probably thinking to themselves, oh, well, that must mean there has to be a time jump then. And that's fine. But what they're maybe not thinking about, if that's the case, is she had a 4-year-old in 2011. Let's say her child was born in 2007. It means when the film comes out, that kid's going to be 18 years old. So they could have had a 2-year-old in 2011, which means by the time the movie comes out, the kid's going to be 16 years old because they would have been born in 2009, and the movie would come out in 2025 and hopefully be set in the year the movie comes out. So what are your thoughts on that, guys? Considering the fact that we don't know for definite, if Sidney has a 16-year-old child in Scream 7, what would you prefer? Would you prefer that the movie be set in the future, after 2025, possibly 2028? Or would you prefer a small retcon, something like saying, do you know what, she already was with Mark for years. I don't think it's possible. It is possible, but she would have to reconnect with Mark after the events of Scream 3 for her not to be with Mark in Scream 4. And then going to be with Mark in Scream 5, they would have to then reconnect. Maybe they reconnected after events of Scream 4, we don't know. Another thing that I forgot to mention is, well, if she was already with Mark, who was a police officer, and she was being attacked in Scream 4, surely Mark would then come running. Well, that could be the case, but then you'd have to say the same thing for Scream 5. She was being attacked by Ghostface. Where was Mark there? So you have to suspend disbelief. You already done it for Scream 5. So why not do it for Scream 4 when you're doing a very small retcon to say that she was already with Mark, as you already had at least one child who's now the protagonist for Scream 7? Anyway, guys, leave your thoughts and comments down below. Let me know what you think, and I'll talk to you soon.
Meeting adjourned.
Be right back!
What are you waiting for, huh?
Coming to get you, Barbara.
Ever played in the cat? Someone's in the back seat! Tell me where you are, John!
Wolfman's got